Yo guys, what's going on? It's Ryuga here with another video. This time we're going to be doing something very similar to the Survivor tier list for perks, except we're going to go over the Killer tier list for perks. So as I stated in my last video, these perks are not going to be in order in the tier because there's like 80 something killer perks. I don't have the time to individually rate very critically every single one of these perks, so we're gonna throw them, in whatever tier they are, no specific order. We're gonna go in alphabetical order for all the perks as well. One thing to note is that we are going over this in relative casual gameplay. We're not going to talk about competitive, because in competitive a lot of perks become stronger than other perks, in those situations. Like, for example, brutal strength is a good perk, but you wouldn't ever think about running that in competitive normally. So lots of things to think about, but we're going to talk about mainly casual play. And before we get strictly into the video, I am going to say on the 27th, on Friday, at least I think it's the 27th, we're going to be doing a subathon. So if you guys want to hang out, we're going to be doing a very long stream. It's going to be up to 40 hours, just depends on, what everybody contributes. And if you want to keep up to date with everything, feel free to join the Discord. You can submit video ideas. You can keep up to date on what exactly we're doing when we go live and when I post a video on YouTube. And other than that, let's go ahead and jump into the video and talk about these perks. By the way, most of this stuff is on the fly. So I haven't sat here and debated everything, to an extreme. This is just me looking at these perks and giving relatively just an instant rating. So let's go ahead and start. The first perk on the list is a Nurse's Calling. It unlocks one's aura reading ability and allows you to see people who are healing or being healed within 28 meters. This is a great perk for ranged killers, as well as killers that are able to easily keep survivors injured or lack a terror radius. So killers such as Huntress, Ghostface, Wraith, it could be decent on Legion. Any killer where you can easily close the gap and ambush people who are healing. It can even be good on Nurse or Hag. This is very good because if you have a 28 meter range, you slap on, let's say, Monitor Abuse, this pretty much outranges all terror radius, besides like Lullabies. So it lets you know where they are before they know you're coming. So I'm going to give Nurse's Calling an A. I think it's a very good, versatile perk. It works on a lot of killers, and it is overall an extremely useful perk to have on a variety of killers. So we're going to go ahead and throw it there. Wow, I've only talked about one perk, and I can already feel my throat starting to hurt. This is going to be fun. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the next perk. We're going to talk about Agitation. So this pretty much increases your movement speed while you're transporting bodies by 18%, and it increases your terror radius by 12 meters. This is an okay perk. It just lets you get to hooks faster, and also if people are being cocky and blocking in front of you, it lets you become a bit faster than them as long as they're not holding absolute W. So overall, decent perk. I wouldn't say it's super good on like a shit ton of killers. It's more over a quality of life perk than anything else. So I'm going to put Agitation B tier because I do think it has its uses, but I don't think that it's like, one of the stronger perks in the game. It's just something that feels good to run, and it has its uses, and it helps you get to places like basement or hooks you normally wouldn't reach faster. And it can be useful on killers who are only 110, get survivors to hooks faster. Next perk on the list is Bamboozle. Bamboozle increases your vault speed by 15%, and whatever window you block you vault gets blocked for 16 seconds. You can only block one vault at the same time. So pretty much this is one of the stronger anti-looping perks. You can cut off almost any window instantly. So, for example, a Jungle Gym or LT or a God Window or, Killer Shack. This is an extremely strong perk. And I would say for a lot of casual gameplay, Bamboozle is going to be up there for one of the strongest perks in the game. For especially the casual player. It removes the ability to really need to know how to run loops, and you just brute force the pallet down. It's an extremely strong perk, and I think that it is, definitely up there with some of the stronger perks that you can run in the game. Works on every single killer except killers you don't vault with, like fucking Nurse, really. So overall, fantastic perk. I highly recommend it, but it takes away a lot of the skill of running loops, which is why a lot of people hate it, but it is still extremely strong. All right, next perk we're going to go ahead and talk about is BBQ and Chili. Everybody knows this perk. Pretty much when you hook a survivor, you see auras of everybody for 4 seconds who are 40 meters or further from the hook. You also get a stackable blood point bonus up to 100%. So I was unsure if I should rate this based on the fact that you get blood points from it, or only the useful portion, like the useful in-game portion. I'm going to go ahead and include the stackable blood point bonus. This is fantastic perk. I'm not going to put it on S tier, but I am going to put it on A tier because overall just being able to see auras and being able to just go to people after you hook somebody and know where people are working on gens or they're healing or whatever on a totem maybe is critical information. And just being able to have a perk that gives you extra blood points is just craigasm. It's so good. You know, without BBQ and Chili, I wouldn't be max on my game right now. I'll just say that. So BBQ and Chili, very good perk, very useful. You can put it on every single killer. There's not a single killer it's not good on. And I'm going to rate it at A tier. I'm not going to put it on S tier because it doesn't really have a usefulness in terms of ending chases really like in a fantastic way, or, you know, it's just a good information perk. All right, Beast of Prey. You get undetectable status effect when you get Bloodlust tier 1. And then you get 50% more blood points in the actions for the Hunter category. I don't know if I've ever seen a use for this. Maybe very, very rare occasion if you're bloodlusting an LT wall or fucking a jungle gym, I guess. That's terrible. Close to one of the worst perks in the game. Not good. I'm just going to put it at D tier and leave it at that. It's terrible. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about Bitter Murmur. Bitter Murmur gives you aura reading. So survivors within 16 meters of a generator that gets completed will be revealed for 5 seconds. And when the last generator is fully repaired, all the survivors' auras are revealed for 10 seconds. This is an okay perk for the fact that it is not a teachable. However, I don't find the usefulness in seeing auras after a generator gets completed because you know that they're around the generator to begin with. So that's something I've never understood. I get why it's good on Huntress because you can snipe. However, I think the most useful part of this perk is the aura revealing after all of the generators are completed. But the thing is, you know, you really don't want all the generators to be completed. So it's like, it's whatever. I'm going to say, I don't think it's completely useless, but I'm going to say it's C tier. I don't think it's one of the best perks on the planet. I really just think that it has very minimal use, but it's not an absolute dead perk. So I'll give it that for the fact that it's not a teachable. Otherwise, though, I wouldn't recommend using this on most killers. I run it on Huntress very rarely if I want to go sniping. That's pretty much it. Alright, Blood Echo. So when you hook a survivor, all other survivors who are injured get hemorrhaged and exhausted for 45 seconds. Has a cooldown of 1 minute. This perk is okay. Being able to exhaust people who are injured is very useful on a lot of killers. Not a lot of killers, but a very select few killers, such as Plague and Legion. But it can also be good on killers that are hit and run, similar to Wraith, Ghostface, etc. But you don't normally see it on those killers. So it's very hard for me to rate this perk because, you know, on Legion, I'm like, yeah, sure, this perk is fucking S tier. It's fantastic, it's fun. But on a majority of killers, it's not good, and honestly, it doesn't even need a cooldown. I'm going to say that it's C tier. I don't think that it has enough compatibility with every killer in the game to be useful, but it still can be useful. It's one of those like back pocket perks that sometimes can nuke a survivor's exhaustion, but it's very rare for you to get extreme value out of this perk unless you're playing a killer like Legion or hit and run Wraith or maybe Bloody Coil Trapper. You have to be very specific with this perk, and that's why I'm going to say that it's not higher than C tier. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about Blood Warden. So basically, if an exit gate is open and you hook a survivor, the exit gates become blocked for 1 minute. It's okay, I guess. But the problem with perks like these is you don't want to get to the end game. You really don't. And this is a perk that encourages you to lose, pretty much. And it's fun when it works. But overall, it's just not... I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. You don't want to use a perk that prepares you to lose. Now, Blood Warden requires you to already have the X gates open. So at that point, you know, even if they have the X gates open, it's very rare for you to be able to get somebody hooked, considering they tend to 99 the gates as well. So while it's useful, I'm going to put it in C tier because it is very, very situational. And C tier is going to be for the perks where I think they're very situational, but they're not completely useless. That's the difference between like C and D. D is pretty much useless. C is like, yeah, I could see some uses, but that's all I can see for Blood Warden. I like running Blood Warden on Huntress because she's very good at slugging because she has such range. But other than that, you know, I don't even consider running this on any of my other killers. Alright, next perk on the list is Bloodhound. Fresh blood marks are considerably more discernible than normal and can be tracked for 4 seconds longer. Pretty simple. I think that if you are not good at tracking, that it's a decent perk. Same with people who might be slightly not as adept to colors, or just in general, you know, have... I don't know if I want to say like short attention spans, but I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. They don't have like the ability to hyper focus like other players, where they're not incredibly good at tracking. And I think that this perk is very useful for a very, very good, like a very large group of players. And maybe you guys disagree, but I do think that this perk has its uses. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it in B tier, because I think that it is very useful to people who just are not as good at tracking. And there's lots of killers who get injuries easy, and Bloodhound just makes it, you know, all the easier to track. Alright, Brutal Strength is the next perk. Pretty much you just destroy pallets, breakable walls, and generators 20% faster. Pretty simple. I'm gonna give it B or A tier. I don't know. I'm gonna give it an A tier. I think Brutal Strength's a good perk. It's a very good offensive perk. It lets you close the distance. It lets you zone better. So what I mean by zoning is, like, let's say they throw a pallet at a junk tile. Basically, you wrap around the side, force them in one direction, and then you might change your direction and act like you're going to walk one way or the other, and then suction back and kick the pallet. The fact that you're able to kick it faster helps with your zoning capability. It's just an overall very comfy perk, very good perk to use in chase, and it's very good on most M1 killers. I'm just going to say, it's a great perk. Alright, next perks on the list. Corrupt Intervention. Corrupt Intervention blocks 3 generators furthest from you for 120 seconds, which is 2 minutes. I'm going to say Corrupt Intervention is an S tier perk. I was considering putting it at A because sometimes they spawn on non-corrupted gens, which is so fucking stupid. But I think that overall it achieves a very, very good goal, especially for maps that are like split in half. It just slows the progress. It makes survivors, you know, they actually have to run around for a bit before starting on a gen. Maybe you can catch them with their pants down because they actually have to go somewhere instead of just, you know, immediately plopping their butts on a gen. Just a very useful perk overall in stopping progress. You can also pair this with other perks to make the beginning game a lot easier for you if that's something you struggle. I think that overall it has a very consistent value, and it's just a fantastic perk overall. Okay, now we have Coloraphobia. Your presence alone instills great fear, blah, blah, blah. Basically, if somebody's in your terror radius, you have a 50% penalty to healing. It can be good for slugging, so I'm going to put it in C tier. Basically, if you're slugging and people are being altruistic and trying to pick up in the terror radius, the slowed pickup speed is insane. Now, I'm not going to say that this perk is fantastic because really it's pretty doo-doo and I don't recommend running it on almost anybody. However, it can be very useful in slugging situations, especially if you're protecting a slug or people are going for flashlight saves, trying to pick up the guy while you're looping somebody else. You know what I mean. If like they're in the terror radius trying to pick somebody up while you're fending off, you know, the altruism, Coloraphobia can be a good perk. And it's also great on killers that have higher terror radius. So it's okay, but, you know, I wouldn't personally run it. All right, now we're going to run Coup de Grace, Coup de Grace, Coup de Gracie, Coup de Grace, however the fuck you want to pronounce it, Coup de Grace. I don't care. Consume 1 token to increase the distance of your next lunge attack by 60%, and you get a token for every time a gen is completed. I would have said this is a good perk, but they fucking completely gutted it from the public test build when it was like 100%, and I don't know why they did this. I absolutely love offensive perks. And the fact that this is 60% and you only get 5 tokens per game is just like so questionable, but it has its uses. It can get you downs on M1 killers. I like to run it sometimes on Legion or Freddy. It's just okay. You can get some downs at some windows. You can make some crazy lunge plays, but for the most part, it's not consistent enough. And guess what? If you barely lunge, if you do a baby lunge, or they dead hard it, it completely removes your coup de grace stack. It's fucking dumb, but you know, it has too many nuances that go around it for it to be a very good perk. However, it still can be used in an offensive way that I think is fun, and it can favor you. I forgot this perk even existed. Cruel Limits. Every time a gen is completed, all windows and vaults within 32 meters of the next completed generator are blocked for all survivors for the next 30 seconds. I think that this perk is pretty useless. I'm going to put it on D tier because I think that even if it blocks all of the vaults in the area, the chance that you're going to be around a completed generator to get significant value out of this isn't very high. And the chance that a gen pops and it's going to affect somebody that you're already in chase with also is not very high. I just think it's too meticulous. It's too, based around generators like distance, that there's not a lot of situations where you get benefit out of this perk. And you're much better off running something like Bamboozle or even fucking Crowd Control. Like, this perk is just so underwhelming that, I just wish it was better. Maybe if it blocked every vault on the map, but, they'd never do that. So, we'll leave it at C tier. Dark Devotion. When you hit a survivor with your basic attack, the Obsession, it gives them your terror radius for 30 seconds, and then it sets the terror radius to 32 meters. Then you become undetectable. The survivor within the transfer terror radius is also considered to be inside the terror radius. So this is a cool perk. Basically, you hit your Obsession with the basic attack, they get your terror radius, and you go sneak off and do other things, or you can make the other survivor run away in fear and scare other survivors. I think that this is a very underrated perk. I'm going to put it in B tier. A lot of basic attack killers can benefit off of this. 30 seconds is a pretty long time to be undetectable for. And it could be incredibly confusing to people if you're, bouncing back and forth whenever you hit the Obsession. They might not even know what's causing the undetectable as well. Overall, I'd say that it's a pretty solid perk, considering you're able to get it pretty consistently when you're hitting the Obsession. And unless they're running Spine Chill, you're going to catch a shit ton of people off guard and either get free downs or free hits. So I highly recommend the perk. It's very fun, very useful, and I think that it is consistent enough to be considered a B tier perk. Alright, page number 2. Dead Man's Switch. You become obsessed with a survivor. When you hook the Obsession, this perk activates for 45 seconds. When it's activated, any survivor that stops repairing a gen before it's fully repaired causes the entity to block the generator until this ends. Afflicted generators are highlighted by white aura. So pretty much what this means is if you hook the Obsession, anybody that leaves a gen makes the gen block until this perk deactivates. This perk's trash. It's a very cool perk in concept, and it can work in some combos with like Freddy and Spirit. But man, this perk is so hard to get value out of, because not only do you have to find the Obsession, you have to hook the Obsession, then you have to push the people off of the generator, and by that time, like, the timer's already fucking halfway gone. Like, really, it's such a bad perk. It needs less nuances to be useful, and it's just not good. Deathbound. So, when a survivor heals another survivor from one health state, at least 32 meters away from you, the survivor performing the healing action will scream and reveal the location, activating Deathbound for the next 60 seconds. During that time, the survivor will suffer from the Oblivious status effect when they are further from 8 meters away from the person that they healed. I'm going to put this at D tier. It's a fun it's not really anti-healing, but it pretty much gives you tracking on when people are healing. It gives you location information, and it lets you be sneaky on the survivor who healed. They might not hear your Terrius, and you can come back and smack them in the butt. Now, the only reason I'm not giving it a B tier is because I would give it B tier if it affected both survivors. I think the fact that it only does one is stupid. I think it would be cooler if it did both. That's the only reason I'm giving it C tier. If it did both, it'd be really cool. But the fact that it does one is a little underwhelming. Still a cool perk, but I don't recommend it. All right, Deer Stalker. Survivors' auras are revealed when they are slugged, when they are within 36 meters. That's a pretty simple perk. I'm going to say B tier. It's a perk made to track your slugs, and it does its job. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's good. I think it's just a perk that does its job. Nothing else to say about it. B tier perk. Works as intended. All right, Discordance. Any generator within a range of 128 meters that is being worked on by 2 survivors or more gets highlighted by a yellow aura. When the generator is highlighted, Discordance triggers a loud notification on the gen, and after it is no longer within the range, or it's no longer being repaired by 2 or more, the aura remains for 4 seconds. So pretty much this tells you if people are doubling up on gens. I just think that Discordance is a very good perk to help counter when survivors are working together to try to either prove a gen or knock out a gen that could be in a dead zone, or at the beginning if they spawn on a gen. It's very, very useful. So I'm going to give it an A tier. I personally don't like running Discordance because I feel like people get too distracted by Discordance going off. They're like, oh shit, Discordance, I need to leave this chase. Or it's the same with Tinker. They're like, oh shit, Tinker, I need to leave this chase. No. Don't do that, but it could still be a good perk, especially for players who really know how to work around this and are very good at their internal clocks, and they know how to balance, you know, their chase interactions as well as like leaving for Discordance and things like that. So Disco can be very good, especially beginning to late game. I don't think it has as much use middle game because you're almost always in a chase, or at least you should be, but definitely has its uses. Distressing. Your tear radius is increased by 26 meters, and you get 100% more blood points in the deviousness category. Trash. There's a few killers that benefit from a higher tear radius, but most don't. Like Doctor, I guess, but Distressing is just not good. I don't know why you would ever want to increase your tear radius unless you're trying to combo this with other perks like Coloraphobia or other shitty perks like Unnerving Presence, etc. Not a good perk. Dragon's Grip. After kicking a generator for the next 30 seconds, the first survivor that interacts with it will scream, revealing their location for 4 seconds, and becoming afflicted with the exposed status effect for 60 seconds. It has a cooldown of 80 seconds. Okay, so to put that into simpler terms that somebody might understand, you kick a gen, if somebody touches it in 30 seconds, they scream and become exposed for a minute. Whether or not the person gets exposed, this perk still goes on a cooldown after the 30 seconds, or 80 seconds. So that means technically the perk has a cooldown of like fucking 110 seconds, like almost 2 minutes. Like this perk has a cool effect. The exposed lasts for a long time, but the cooldown is so fucking bad that I'm putting it in D tier. It's so hard to get use out of this shitty fucking perk. Like the cooldown is absurd when you kick a gen and nobody touches it. It should reset the cooldown if it doesn't activate. That's just my opinion. I think it's a very, very bad perk overall. Just not useful. Dying Light. You become obsessed with one survivor. Your obsession gains a 33% action speed to unhooking, healing. So every time you hook a survivor who isn't the obsession, you get a token. If the obsession is alive, all survivors who are not the obsession get a 3% penalty to repair, healing, sabotaging speeds for every token. So pretty much every time you hook somebody, you get a 3% stackable penalty to everybody who is not the survivor. The problem with this perk is not only does it give the survivor obsession a benefit to everything, it also doesn't affect them. And then on top of that, in order for this perk to be useful, you already have to have a shit ton of like hooks. And if you already have a shit ton of hooks, then that means the game is probably already going in your favor. So I'm going to say Dying Light is useless. Now, it could be good if you're stacking slowdowns, but like for the most part, you just don't want to be running this perk. There are other perks you can run, and this perk, by the time it's useful, the game is over, and it has too much benefit for the obsession. Alright, so the next perk we're going to be looking at is Enduring. You reduce the duration of pallet stuns by 50%. A tier. It does what it's supposed to do. It makes walking through pallets a lot more bearable. And overall, if somebody stuns you on the wrong side, it pretty much guarantees you an instant grab. Or if they try to dumb tech you as well. Incredibly strong perk, very basic, not a lot of input required, and it's just overall very good in chase, I think. that's pretty much all there is to it. Decent perk. All right. So the next perk on the list is Eruption. So what Eruption does is when you kick a generator, it becomes highlighted in yellow. Whenever you down a survivor, every affected generator explodes, losing 6% worth of progress, and it starts to regress. Any survivor repairing a generator when it exploded will scream and suffer from the incapacitated status effect for 16 seconds. Then this has a cooldown of 30 seconds once it goes off. You know, despite popular belief, and I thought it would be a bad perk to begin with, I actually think this perk is good. I'm going to say that it is an A tier perk. The reason I'm putting it at A tier is because the incapacitated status effect for 16 seconds is pretty fucking absurd. You can't, like if you're working on the gen with a teammate, you can't heal each other after it goes off. You can't work on the gen. You can't fucking do anything. So I feel like the incapacitated status effect is very overlooked. It gives you a reason to kick gens. It stacks well with other perks as well. So overall, I'd say it's a very versatile, very good perk, and it has a very unique effect. And I encourage people to use this because I like people branching their builds out. I highly recommend using this. So overall, good perk. Not a long cooldown like some perks have. And just overall has an impactful effect on gameplay. Alright, next perk on the list. Fire Up. For each generator that is completed, you gain a 4% stackable buff that grants a speed bonus to picking up, dropping, vaulting, damaging gens, breaking pallets for the remainder of the trial. So it's like Brutal Strength, just weaker. I think that it's okay. I don't know if I put it at B tier or C tier, but I'm probably going to keep it at C tier because by the time it's super noticeable is when the game is almost to a close. It's a very comfy perk if you like the speeds. I, for example, really enjoy the pickup speed and the drop speed. But for the most part, it's not that useful. But it is fun to run. I don't discourage people from using it. It has its uses, but for the most part, it takes too long for the effect to stack up enough for it to be noticeable. Force Penance. Survivors who take a protection hit are inflicted with the broken status effect for 80 seconds. Who cares? I mean, that's not really that useful, and that's just like, yeah, somebody might take a protection hit, but like, what is breaking that person gonna do for you? I don't think it's that beneficial. I don't know, maybe I'm like overthinking it, but I feel like this perk just doesn't have a lot of practical uses. Sure, it counters altruism, but you could run something else, like Sloppy Butcher would be better. Maybe, because then they take longer to heal. Like, I get it, this will keep them injured, but you want them to waste their time and not sit on a gen. When somebody becomes broken, they're going to sit on a gen because they can't heal. So, Force Penance overall, I just don't think is good. Alright, Franklin's. While on the ground, when you hit a survivor, they drop their item. It has to be a basic attack. So while it's on the ground, it takes up to 90 seconds for the item to lose all of its charges if it's not picked up. It reveals items on the ground within 32 meters with a white aura, and the aura will slowly fade to red until the item is empty of charges. It does its job. I personally never run Franklin's, but I guess it's good against medkits and all the keys and etc. because you can't use keys if they have no charges. So I'll put it at B tier. It does its job. It's supposed to get rid of item charges. Works very well against medkits mostly. I don't think it works well against toolboxes because mostly people use toolboxes when they spawn into the match already. Keys, it could work against the key, but for the most part, you can drop the key in a bush and hide it until you're ready to use it, so that Franklin's never affects it once you learn that they have Franklin's. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good perk if you like to get rid of items, but I don't like to use it personal opinion. I would rather just run other things, but I can see the value of this perk. Oh god. May I introduce you guys to the most useless perk in Dead by Daylight. Furtive Chase. You become obsessed with one survivor. You lurk in the shadows, eliminating your victims one by one. When your obsession is hooked, Furtive Chase receives a token up to a maximum of 4 tokens. Each token decreases your terrorities by 4 meters in a chase. When a survivor rescues the obsession from a hook, the rescuer becomes the obsession. You lose all your tokens if the obsession is sacrificed or killed. Okay, first of all, that's too much shit. Alright, obsession this, obsession that, becomes the obsession. it deactivates, blah, blah, blah. It's terrible. First of all, you're already in a chase. You don't need your Tierlist to be smaller when you're in a chase. The chances that you get this perk to actually work is, like, terrible. It's just not, it's not practical. And then you lose all of your tokens if the obsession fucking dies. Hello? What? Like, it's so bad, bro. That's all I have to say about it. Like, it has no real practical uses. Alright, enough with that shitty perk. Let's talk about the next shitty perk. Gearhead. After hitting a survivor 2 times with their basic attack, Gearhead activates for 30 seconds. While Gearhead is active, each time a survivor completes a good skill check while repairing a gen, this generator will be revealed in a yellow aura for as long as it's being repaired. I would love to put this perk higher, but, like, it requires 2 basic attacks. It requires the survivors to hit skill check, which there's a chance that they won't even get a skill check. It has a duration of fucking 30 seconds for 2 attacks. You're better off running other detection perks. Like, this is just so... Like, if it wasn't basic attacks, maybe I would put it better as a better tracking. And maybe if it was only 1 attack, even then, that's the only way I would find this perk to be good. But for the most part, this either needs an extended duration or it needs to be changed to non-basic attacks and reduce the amount of times. So, yeah, that's what I think about Gearhead. Mostly useless. Hangmans Trick. You get a notification when a survivor begins saboing hook, and while carrying a survivor, you see the aura of any survivors within 6 meters of a hook. I know what you guys are thinking. Trash, right? You know what? I actually disagree. I think Hangmans Trick is extremely underrated. I think as an aura perk, it is interesting, and the ability to see survivors in different parts of the map is good. It's similar auras to BBQ, but not as strong. It can be good for killers that have fast mobility, like Nurse, Billy, Blight, Spirit, for example. You get to locations fast. And overall, I just think that the aura rating is underrated. And if you disagree, I think that you should give this perk a try and let me know what you guys experience. But I think that it overall has some uses. Okay. Hex Blood Favor. Contender for also one of the worst perks in the game. Where a survivor is hit with a basic attack, pallets within 16 meters of your location are held in place by the entity for 15 seconds. They cannot be pulled down. Hex Blood Favor has a cooldown of 40 seconds. So basically it has a cooldown of 55 seconds because, you know, the 15 seconds it's active and then the 40 seconds it's not active. And then it requires a basic attack, so it doesn't work on any other killers except M1. 16 meters is like, if you've ever measured 16 meters in DBD, it's like, so you can run much further than with the speed boost from 16 meters than anything else. Terrible. Get this perk out of my fucking face. Trash. Crowd control. Basically Hex Bamboozle. The entity blocks a window for 20 seconds after a survivor rushes through it. Honestly, I mean, it's alright. I don't think it's like one of the best things on the planet, but if it stays active, you can brute force jungle gyms, LT walls, the killer shack, and it can block multiple windows as well, so you can annoy the fuck out of survivors. Hex Hope. So pretty much, you get a token every time somebody gets unhooked if you're far enough. So at 2 tokens, you get speed. 3 tokens, survivors become exposed. 5 tokens, you kill everybody, or you get to Mori them. And I'd say that's a pretty good effect. It's very simple. It's a hex. It can get cleansed. It's a high risk, high reward. I'm going to put it in A tier. Very good perk. Just incredible use. If you get the effect, it means at 5 hooks, you get to start killing people, right? You literally, somebody who hasn't been hooked before, you can just fucking kill them. I think that's incredible. Overall, very strong perk, very useful, and, you know, as a hex, high risk, high reward, as they all are. So Hex Haunted Ground. You get 2 trapped hex totems in the trial. If one is cleansed, all survivors become exposed for a minute. The other one becomes dull. I also think this is a good perk. If they cleanse it, you get exposed for a minute. You get to fuck up survivors, and then it goes away. I think that it does its job. It's not extremely overpowered, and it works very well with other hex perks. Alright, Huntress's Lullaby. For every hooked survivor, survivors get a... the time between their skill check warning and sound becomes shorter, and at 5 tokens they have no skill check sound. If survivors miss a skill check, they receive a 6% regression penalty when missing the skill check while healing or repairing. This is in addition to what they already lose, so it's a shit ton. So I'm going to put this at B tier. I think it's a very strong hex if it stays up. The regression is extremely underrated. I think that it is an incredibly good perk. Lots of people look over it because they're like, oh, well, I just hit my skill checks. In use, that's not as easy as it sounds. You know, skill checks without sounds are fucking hard. You literally have to glue your eyes to the screen and focus so hard. So I'd say overall, very good perk. So Hex Noed. When all of the X gates are powered, if there's a dull totem, this hex applies to it. Survivors become exposed and you are 4% faster. I will say that this perk, I bet you guys want it up here. Up here? Up here? Up here? No, it's an endgame perk. I don't like it. You pretty much are preparing to lose. And while it can get you a kill, maybe two, survivors can cleanse it in the endgame. At most, you should get one extra kill from this perk. I don't think that that is enough to warrant it a higher spot. This is another perk where you prepare to lose. And I fucking hate perks like that. I don't think it's as good as people think it is. And if you give the killer more than one kill by rushing in and not cleansing Noed or being greedy, you know, that's on you. That's not on the perk Noed. That's on you being dumb and not leaving. So I think that the perk itself, while it is strong in the endgame, it is not as strong as people say it is. And the killer at that point has already lost. So that's my take on it. I just don't think it deserves the spot that I'm sure a lot of people think it does. Alright, Retribution. Any survivor who cleanses a dull totem suffer from the Oblivious status effect for 45 seconds. If any Hex totem is cleansed, including this one, the aura of all survivors are revealed for 10 seconds. I'd say very, very useful perk. I'm probably going to put it B tier. The auras last for 10 seconds, so that's a pretty substantial amount of time. It also allows you to cause the survivors to become oblivious, and oblivious is an underrated status effect. Survivors half the time forget they're oblivious. You just walk up to them and beat the shit out of them. It's very fun. Pair it with other Hex totems, and it's just overall a very good combination, and it just provides a change in pace of gameplay and a different style, and I think that's good. Hex Ruin. If a survivor is not working on a gen, it automatically regresses at 200%. We already know, I think that Hex Ruin is an A tier perk. If you're very good at pushing survivors off of generators, the gens, like this, the generator could be 99, you push them off, in less than like a minute or so, that gen is already back at 0. It's incredible. If this perk stays up, it is a fucking monster. Now, like Devour Hope, it's high risk, high reward, but this perk is insane. We all know it is. So, although it can be cleansed, the effects, if it doesn't get cleansed, is crack. So, I'm just going to put it at that. It's a very strong perk overall, and I use it in a lot of my builds. Put it with other slowdowns, it just becomes unbearable. Hex Third Seal. If you hit somebody with a basic attack, it applies blindness. This applies to the 4 survivors. So this is cool. It hides hook auras. It hides slugs. I have many problems with this perk. First problem is it requires a basic attack. That pretty much makes it useless on, you know, half the killers. It is a hex, so obviously you get cleansed. A blindness status effect is so dumb because you get to see where people get hooked, but like you can't see them afterward. You see the bubble, but you don't see the aura. It's so weird. I think that if this applied obliviousness permanently instead of blindness, that it would be very, very strong. But just the blindness in general is just not good. I'm going to say that overall it's D tier. I love the perk. I think it's cool, but it's just not effective enough to be good. And if you're in a survive with friends, the blindness is useless because then you just be like, yo, bro, I'm down at the killer shack, homie. Oh shit, thanks, man. I couldn't see your aura. Good thing I had communication to tell me where you were. Don't gotta worry about this hex perk. You see, it's pretty fucking useless. I'll keep it a D tier. Alright. Thrill of the Hunt. Basically, You get more blood points for actions in the Hunter category. Survivor's cleansing speed is reduced by 6% for every token, and you gain a notification when somebody starts working on a totem, a Hex totem specifically. I'd say it does its job. I'm going to put it in C tier. I don't think it's useless. Paired with other totems, it's very strong. It also lets you know how many dual totems are remaining on the map, so you can use this with no-ed and no, like maybe if it's not going to activate. Not a super strong perk. All it does is protect your hexes, but sometimes that's enough. Sometimes survivors are over committed to totems, and they will be very angry that you don't let them cleanse their totem if you keep pushing them off of it. So this perk has more uses than meets the eye, and overall it can be pretty decent. Hexon Dying. It protects hex totems pretty much. So you get to see the aura of survivors who are close to a dual totem, 4 meters, and if a hex gets cleansed, it transfers to Undying instead, and then Undying is gone. And then, if it has tokens, it keeps the tokens as well. Overall, Undying, very, very good perk, totem perk. I'm going to say that it is an A tier perk. It pretty much guarantees you that you're going to get use out of Undying, or whatever, if you're going to get use out of Ruin, Devour, Lullaby, Retribution, you know, Third Seal, anything. It guarantees you that you're at least going to get a little bit of value, and that's good enough for me. Order. Survivors reveal their location when they interact with a chest or when they pick up an item within 64 meters of your location. The trial begins with up to 2 additional chests in the environment. Okay, who the fuck cares? D tier. Like seriously, bruh. Who cares? I don't fucking care if they're looting. They're not doing gens. Have your fucking chest, bro. I don't care. It doesn't give me any value in the game. Maybe if a basement, but you might as well run Territorial Imperative. Whatever. Okay. Hysteria. Whenever a healthy survivor becomes injured by any means, all survivors suffer from the Oblivious status effect. All injured survivors for 30 seconds. Then it has a 30-second cooldown. And the cooldown actually starts when the effect activates, which is fucking awesome because it automatically applies it. So it's pretty much every 30 seconds, if you hit somebody, you can make people oblivious. So let me explain this because a lot of people seem to be confused with this perk. This perk activates if you put somebody who is healthy to the injured state by any means. So, to put this into perspective, if we hit somebody with an M2, such as Legion's Feral Frenzy, this perk activates. If you are just chilling and you're infected by the plague, and suddenly you become broken because you become sick enough, this perk activates. If you get hit with a zombie, this perk activates. If you use For the People to pick a survivor up and you go from healthy to injured, this perk activates. Any situation where you go from healthy to injured, this perk will activate. Now, this does not activate if a healthy survivor goes from healthy to dying. So it does not work on one-shots. It does not work if you grab somebody from a locker. That is one important thing to understand. Now, this perk overall is very good on killers that can spread injuries, similar to Blood Echo. However, there's not a lot of killers that this is going to be incredibly useful on, because they're going to already be hit and run stealth killers like Ghostface or Wraith. It could be pretty good on Blight. I guess maybe on Nurse. It's very good on Legion. So for the most part, I'd say it's an okay perk. I think it's fun. I'm going to put it on B tier. I think that it has its uses and it's an underrated perk. Oblivious status effect, like I've said multiple times in this video, is an underrated idea. And you'd be surprised on how often you catch survivors off guard with this perk. I'm all ears. When a survivor performs a rushed action within 48 meters, their location and aura is revealed for 6 seconds, and it has a 40-second cooldown. I wish the cooldown was shorter, but it overall has a very fun effect in loops. You can use this to mind game mid-loop. So for example, a survivor vaults a jungle gym or an LT wall. You stand still and you just wait for them. You watch their aura, wait for them to go to a point that's beyond them able to take it back, and then you quickly pursue in that direction and you catch them completely off guard because they had no idea you could see their aura. Um, just an overall fun perk, but the cooldown is a bit long, and I don't like that. Too situational. Sometimes they don't even like fast vault something, and if they vault a pallet in your line of sight, it still activates the perk. It's just annoying, but it can be useful, so that's why I'm putting it in C tier. All right, Infectious Fright. When you down a survivor, anybody in your terror radius screams, and they reveal their location for 6 seconds. This is a fantastic informational perk. Very good on one-shot killers, very good on killers that can get downs fast, and very good on getting information if somebody's nearby trying to get a flashlight save, for example, or if they're waiting to get a pallet stun or a pallet save. Overall, very good information perk, very good slugging perk, and fantastic on a lot of the already stronger killers. I honestly think Infectious Fright needs to be nerfed to have a cooldown up to like 20 seconds. That way you can't just fuck everybody in the ass. But that's just me. Overall, strong perk, lots of good information, and I highly recommend using it. Alright, next perk. Insidious. Standing still for 2 seconds makes you undetectable. No. Anyways, Iron Grasp. The effects of survivors struggling are reduced by 75%, and the time to struggle out of your grasp is increased by 12%. Ooh, I don't know, man. Is it completely useless? I don't think so. I'm gonna put it on the useless tier. Listen, so Iron Grasp is such a niche perk. Usually people only use it to like go basement, and you should be able to get to a hook, really. I don't think there's really much use for this perk. Like, I get it, it's good if people are body blocking, if there aren't hooks close, but for the most parts, I just don't think it's very useful in common like gameplay, especially at like red ranks, for example. I just don't, like, there's so many better things you could run. Like, you could run Starstruck, then nobody's gonna body block you, just get to your hook. I don't know. But yeah, I'm just gonna put it a D tier. I was tempted to put it C tier, but you know, now that I just consider it more, I just don't think that, you know, it belongs higher. Alright, next perk on the list. Iron Maiden. You open lockers 50% faster. Survivors who exit from a locker suffer from the exposed status effect for 30 seconds. And they scream, and they reveal their location. I'm gonna say C tier. It's good on killers that need to reload, like, for example, Trickster, Huntress. And it's good on other killers. It can be good on Doctor, because if they hide in the locker to avoid a shock, when they come out, they'll scream and be exposed anyways. It could work on killers like Billy and Leatherface. If they try to jump into a locker to avoid your chainsaw, when they jump out, they'll be exposed. If they head on you, they'll be exposed for 30 seconds afterwards. So it has its uses. Honestly, you know what? It has so many uses. I'm going to move it up to B tier. I think actually that it's okay. Not the best perk, but I think it is still very versatile with mini killers, and it has a lot of underrated ways to implement it. Knockout. Survivors put into the dying state by a basic attack. There's our lovely friend, basic attack. They are not revealed to other survivors if they're outside of 16 meters. When they are put into the dying state by a basic attack, they crawl 50% slower for 15 seconds, and this person on the ground is blind. It's a good slugging perk. I'm going to put it C tier because the basic attack, once again, limits it. Swift destroy this perk, but for the most parts, if you want to slug, I suppose it's okay. However, I'm not going to put it any higher than that just because the basic attack limitation is just obnoxious. Alright, next perk on the list. Lethal Pursuer. I'm going to put Lethal Pursuer in A tier. I was considering putting it in S tier, but let's go ahead and go over what it does first. At the start of the trial, all survivors are revealed for 9 seconds. So there's two things. So first, this perk is good for people who just want to find somebody fast. They have fast mobility. They can get across the map like in an instant. Overall, this is very good for starting the game. On the downside, if you're somebody like me who has a lot of hours, I pretty much already know where people spawn. So this perk, while it can be useful, you know, I can sometimes deduce where they spawn automatically. So that's why it's not S tier, but it is good for people who lack that information and aren't able to put the pieces together as well as maybe a more veteran player. So good perk, does what it needs to do, and I'll put it that. It can pair well with Corrupt Intervention, I guess. All right, Lightborn. You're immune to being blind, and then survivors who attempt to blind you have their aura revealed for 10 seconds. I'm gonna put Lightborn at C tier. Now, the reason I'm putting Lightborn at C tier is because it does what it's supposed to do. It makes you immune to being blind. So survivors try to blind you at pallets, you end up getting a free hit, you can't get flashlights saved on. Overall, you know, it's a solid perk that does its job, but if they don't bring flashlights, this perk has fucking no use. So that's why I'm putting it at C tier and no higher. Okay. Mad Grit. You have no missed basic attack cooldown when you're carrying somebody. And if you hit somebody, the person you're carrying has their wiggle timer paused for 4 seconds. Once again, super situational perk. It's good when it works, but like for the most part, you need so many different nuances to pull this perk off. And for the most part, the only time people use this is if they stack it together in a build. So the fact that this perk is so reliant on others makes me rate it not as high as other perks. So let us talk about the next one, which is Make Your Choice. When a survivor rescues another survivor from a hook at least 32 meters away, they become exposed for a minute. I think that Make Your Choice is an incredibly strong perk. Being exposed for a minute is nothing short of very, what's the word? It applies a lot of pressure to the survivor who gets unhooked. You know, 60 seconds is a long time, and honestly, it's very good on a shit ton of M1 killers. It could be very good on Nurse as well, Spirit. Like, these people underestimate being exposed for that long. Now, that's why I would put Dragon's Grip higher, like, because being exposed for 60 seconds is incredible. But, you know, Make Your Choice is way more useful. And, you know, you get you get your use out of it. I think you guys know what I'm trying to say. You unhook somebody, you become exposed, and the killer can come get you. Pretty simple, straightforward, solid perk. All right, next on the list. Mindbreaker. If you touch a gen, you become exhausted for 5 seconds. You also cannot you cannot recover from exhaustion while you're touching the gen. No. No. It only like is useful against sprint bursts, really, I guess. But it's, bro, it's so nuancy. Like, it's so hard to see if you're truly getting value from this perk. Because if somebody has sprint burst, or they head on you and escape, they can't get on a gen if they want to recover exhaustion. But at the same time, they could also just sit on the gen anyways. So I just don't. No. I don't know, man. I wish it was better, but I'm going to keep it useless. Monitor and Abuse. While in chase, your terror radius is increased by 8 meters. Otherwise, it's decreased by 8 meters. And your FOV is increased by 10 meters while not in chase. So this perk, pretty solid. I'm going to put it at B tier. I think that terror radius reducing perks are actually a lot more useful than people think. Especially if you throw it on killers who have a 24 meter terror radius. Or, you know, just like killers have a 32 meter terror radius. It just confuses people. And I think confusing people is an important part of playing killer. When you confuse them, it lets you get downs, so on and so forth. Monstrous Shrine. Basically, basement becomes more potent. No. Next. Nemesis. Anytime a survivor stuns you, they become oblivious for 60 seconds, and they have their aura shown for 4 seconds. No. I would say this is good, but you don't really want to get stunned and then leave the survivor. Like, you just don't really want to do that. Because you want to catch people off guard who are oblivious. But if they are oblivious, you know, you don't want to leave them. Right? Because you have 60 seconds. You don't want to leave them and come back. Like, you don't have enough time to do that shit. Like, I don't know. Like, it can work, I guess. But just no. Alright, No Way Out. Every time you hook a unique survivor, you get a token. So once the exegates have been powered, no way out activates. When a survivor interacts with an exegate switch, they receive a loud noise notification. The entity then blocks both exegate switches for 12 seconds, plus 12 additional seconds for every token in your possession. So that's 12, 24, 36, 48, and then plus 12 more, 60. So 1 whole minute the exegates gets blocked if you've hooked everybody. I actually think this perk, while I say I don't like perks where you plan to lose, this perk isn't really planning to lose. It's very solid at the end game. Like, I've used it and I've gotten 2+ more kills with this perk. You know, and it lets you play a lot more fair because maybe you have 3 or you have 1 kill and then the last gen gets completed. Then you finish your chase with 1 guy while No Way Out is blocking the exegates. You hook him, that guy dies. And then you go find the 3rd guy and you kill him because he can't open the exegates. I say that No Way Out is actually a very solid perk. Oppression. When you damage a gen, up to 3 other gens start to regress. If somebody is on the gen, then it gives them a difficult skill check. Oppression has a cooldown of 1 minute and 20 seconds. The cooldown's just too much. Cool effect, too much of a cooldown. Overcharge. When you kick a gen, anybody who touches it the next time are faced with a tremendously difficult skill check. If they fail it, they blow up the gen, resulting in an additional 5% loss, you know, plus everything else. I actually think Overcharge is an underrated perk. You know, survivors can hit skill checks if they're good, but if you slam them with enough of these tremendously difficult skill checks, they're gonna miss one eventually, man. I have 5,000 hours. I'm a very good survivor. I hit almost great skill checks 75% of the time I'm doing them. But I'll still fucking miss a skill check. I'll still miss an Overcharge skill check, man. I'm not invincible. Sometimes you just miss, and I just think that the perk can be more useful than people give it credit for against good survivors. Overwhelming Presence. Affected survivors' item consumption rates are increased by 100% if they're in your territories. Okay, first of all, this is only useful against flashlights because that's the only thing you should be using in the killer's territories. Second of all, if you're using your flashlight, just put on fucking Lightborn. Perk is garbage. Get it away. Play with your food. When you leave the obsession, you get a token, up to 3 max, and for every token, your movement speed is increased by 5%. Too much nuance. You have to find the obsession. It's just not good. You have to find the obsession, lose the obsession, go find somebody else. You're literally wasting too much time trying to get this perk to activate. Now, it could be good on Wraith, and it could be good paired with Nemesis, but if you have to go through that much work to make the perk work, it's not a good perk. Let's put it that way. Alright, pop goes the weasel. Every time you kick a gen... every time you hook a survivor for the next 45 seconds, the next gen that you kick loses 25% of its progress. This is a great perk, rewards you for hooking survivors, and rewards you for leaving the hook and going to gens. So, solid perk. I think it's one of the best perks. It's one of the most rewarding perks, one of the most fair perks. People don't like this perk. They say, oh, fucking pop goes the weasel, this perk's such bullshit. But it's like the only perk in the game that rewards killers for hooking somebody and leaving the hook to go pop a gen. Like, I don't get what's wrong with it. Like, sure, it can be frustrating, but if you're getting so many pops in a row, then, like, I get it. If you have Ruin and Pop and Undying, it can be annoying, but Pop itself, I think, is a very fair perk. Predator. Scratch marks left by survivors will spawn considerably closer together. No. It's just, it makes scratch marks even harder to track. I don't know. Maybe it's useful for people with... Is there anybody with some kind of like mental deficit that this actually helps? Because the only thing that I think is that maybe if somebody has some kind of like disorder, and I don't mean that in a negative way, I just mean like it's harder for them to track the scratch marks, whether it's color blindness or what. If colorblind mode plus this helps, I don't know if Predator is useful to them. I might put it higher if it is, but I don't see how it could be. I don't know. I just think it's a useless perk. Rancor. Every time a gen is complete, your obsession sees your aura for 3 seconds. Every time a gen is complete, all survivors' locations are revealed to you for 3 seconds. And once all gens are completed, the obsession is exposed and you can kill them, which means you can worry them. I think that this perk is okay because of the information it gives you after a gen is popped. You get to see every single person's aura. Or not aura, a screen bubble, pretty much. They don't scream, but it's like a little bubble. It shows you where everybody is. I'd say it's a pretty good perk. Being able to kill the Obsession instantly at the end is also icing on the cake. Let you ignore them all game and then just insta-kill them at the end. I wouldn't say this perk is planned to lose, but you know, it has a lot of information that I think is good. Remember Me. Every time you hit the Obsession with a basic attack, you increase the opening time of the X-Gates by 4 seconds, up to a maximum of 16 additional seconds. So I think what the X-Gate takes 20 seconds to open now, maybe less than that, might be 16, correct me if I'm wrong. So it makes this take like, 30 something seconds to open. Problem with this perk is, once again, it requires you to hit the Obsession, it requires a basic attack. I would put it higher, but this perk is better now because you could stack it with No Way Out. But the Obsession also opens the gate at normal speed, which once again is fucking annoying. So I'm gonna put it at C tier. I think this perk is fun, it has its uses, but it's just too nuancey. Like, any perk that has too many nuances is just not good. Alright, Sabiffle, otherwise known as Save the Best for Last. Every time you hit somebody who is not the Obsession, you get a token. For every token, you get a 5% decreased successful basic attack cooldown, up to 8 tokens. Hitting your Obsession with a basic attack will cause you to lose 2 tokens. So at 8 tokens, pretty much when you smack somebody, you recover so fast. So fast. This is incredibly good. This is such a good perk on M1 killers. It's even a good perk on killers that are ranged. For example, like Deathslinger, you want to hit and then shoot. Or maybe Nemesis. I'm going to put this in an A tier. Very strong perk. And just incredibly good. It has a shit ton of uses. And overall, I think it's a community favorite as a perk. Shadowborn. Your FOV is increased by 15 degrees. I get it, some of you are Shadowborn crackheads, but this perk provides no practical use in actual gameplay. Sloppy Butcher. When you hit somebody with a basic attack, they become mangled and hemorrhaged, and it considerably increases the bleeding frequency. And overall, pretty good slowdown perk for what you have to do for it, and it's also a non-teachable. I think Sloppy Butcher is an A tier perk. It's very strong, available to everybody, and simple to use. Spies. If you alert a crow, or if a survivor disturbs a crow within 36 meters, you are alerted, and it has a 5-second cooldown. I mean, it's okay. It's an okay tracking perk, not the best. But if you are bad at tracking, if a survivor sets up a crow, and you're not good at tracking crows, then this could be your perk. Let's go after Spear Fury. So after you break 2 pallets, the next time you're stunned by one, it instantly breaks on you. Most people will pair this with Enduring. Now, I don't know if I want to rate Spirit Fury paired with Enduring or Spirit Fury on its own. Because if it's on its own, I would give it B tier, but if it's not on its own, I would give it A tier. But for the lack of, or for just more simplicity, I'm going to assume most people use Spirit Fury with Enduring. Is that fair? I think that's a fair assumption. Spirit Fury Enduring, nobody really uses Spirit Fury on its own, except for me because I'm a fucking crackhead. But I think it's a very fun perk. It's very strong when paired with Enduring, and it can get you pretty much guaranteed downs in a set amount of time. Alright, next perk, Starstruck. When you are carrying a survivor, anybody in the terror radius becomes exposed. The effect persists for 30 seconds on survivors who leave your terror radius, as well as those within the radius when you hook or release the carried survivor. Has a cooldown of 60 seconds once the survivor is no longer carried. Strong perk. It prevents body blocking, or prevents altruism. If you carry the survivor to a gen that's being done, you can expose people that are working on gens. I think that Starstruck is actually a very, very good perk. Next perk, Strider. People breathe louder. Whoa. Terrible. It used to be good on Spirit back when status effects weren't multiplicative. Or sorry, were multiplicative. So Iron Will. Sorry, no. Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say. When the effects were additive. Because then Strider would make people with Iron Will actually make noise. Now they're multiplicative, so now they don't make noise with Strider. So now Strider is useless. Never put on Strider ever in your entire life. Okay, Surge. When you put a survivor into the dying state with a base attack, it causes all gens within 32 meters to explode and regress. Generators affected by Surge lose 8% of their progress, and Surge can only trigger every 40 seconds. I'd say this is a pretty useful perk. I'm going to put it in A tier. I think it's solid. It's very good on M1 killers, and it saves you time. It gives you information on if survivors are on a gen, because it'll make it explode. The scoring event tells you how many gens around you are being worked on, because it tells you how many that you hit with Surge. And it just saves you time, because you don't have to go kick it. Alright, Surveillance. Basically, if a gen is regressing, you see its aura. And then if somebody touches it, it is highlighted in yellow for 16 seconds. It also makes gens become louder. I think that Surveillance is also an A tier perk. I think that knowing when a survivor touches your gen is great information, and this pairs well with so many perks, like, for example, Surge, Pop, Eruption, fucking literally anything else that touches a gen, Ruin. Just very, very strong. Alright, last page, Territorial Imperative. If somebody enters the basement, at least 32 meters away from you, you see their aura for 3 seconds. That's okay. It lets you get a slide on the basement, I guess. It's not terrible. It's not super good, but I'd say overall, it has its uses. Thanatophobia. Every injured survivor, or dying, or hooked survivor, everybody receives a 5% penalty, up to a maximum of 20% to repairing, sabotaging, and totem cleansing. I'd say that's a B tier perk. It's very solid. I would put it A tier, but, you know, I think it is like S tier on Legion, but for everybody else, I think it's a B tier perk. It's very good. It's very versatile. It has space in a lot of builds. Overall, very solid perk, and it, you know, slows totem cleansing, which can be useful as well if you're trying to stop your hex from being cleansed. And I'd highly recommend Thanatophobia. Thrilling Tremors. After you pick up a survivor, all gens not being repaired are blocked by the entity and cannot be repaired for the next 16 seconds. You also see the aura of all those gens. Thrilling Tremors can only be triggered once a minute. So pretty much this is like BBQ and Chili. Every time you pick up a survivor, you pretty much see what gens survivors are working on, and you see what gens they're not working on. Now, gens that are blocked by Thrilling Tremors don't regress, so that's something you have to keep in mind. I think that overall, Thrilling Tremors is a decent perk. We're going to move it to B tier because of the information it gives. I wish the cooldown was a little less, not like 20 seconds or anything, maybe 30 or 40 like Surge. But for the most part, I'd say pretty good, great information, and it can help stall gens. And yeah, you can push a survivor off of your gen and then pick up a survivor and block it. Kind of the same thing as like Eruption, just the time you buy. Pretty useful. All right. Tinkerer. When a gen is repaired to 70%, it triggers a loud noise notification and you become undetectable for 16 seconds. I think Tinkerer is an A tier perk. Tinker is very strong because it lets you know what generators to go to when they're about to be completed. This pairs well with perks like Ruin. You can use it with Surveillance. You can use it with fucking maybe Eruption to know that if you're down is going to affect somebody or not. But the one thing I don't like about this perk is that it distracts people the same way as Discordance. They hear it and they're like, oh no, I gotta go protect my gen, when they're about to have somebody downed. So you gotta consider when you're running Tinkerer, is the person I'm chasing somebody I can down soon? And if I leave them, is it gonna be more of a shot in the foot to go stop a gen on people that I have no pressure on right now? Or is it gonna be better to get my down? Those are the things you have to consider when you're using Tinker. And a lot of people, they hear Tinker and they're like, oh, bye. And a lot of people use Ruin Undying Tinker, which is an incredibly oppressive, incredibly strong build. But overall, I just think that Tinker on its own is good, but a lot of people use it in the wrong way. The same as Discordance. Alright, Trail of Torment. If you kick a gen, you become undetectable until the gen stops regressing, or you injure a survivor or put a survivor in the dying state. And then it has a cooldown of 60 seconds. I actually think this perk is pretty cool. I'm going to put it in C tier. It requires you to kick a gen, which kind of sucks. And then the survivors can touch it to stop it. It's just an interesting concept. You can get the jump on somebody maybe. Maybe they'll think that the yellow aura is somebody else's blast mine aura or something else. But for the most part, it's a cool perk, but too meticulous to use optimally. Unnerving Presence. Skill checks in the terror radius are 60% smaller, and it has a 10% greater chance of triggering skill checks while repairing or healing if you're in the terror radius. This is fucking bad. These skill checks are easy. It's easier to hit great skill checks when you're under the effect of Unnerving Presence, because like it just is. Like if you've never been under the Unnerving Presence like effect, it's way easier to hit these skill checks. This perk is trash. All right, Unrelenting. The cooldown after basic missed attacks is reduced by 30%. I would put this in the ultimate trash tier, but I'm actually not, because, you know, people who are on controller, some people on keyboard even, who just suck at attacking, suck at hitting their strikes. You know, Unrelenting is good. Put on Unrelenting if you miss a lot. I mean, you know, what's to lose? You know, it does what it needs to do. It helps you recover faster from attacks if you miss a lot. And I don't think there's anything wrong with running this. You know, and it has some uses on Deathslinger or Spirit, like if you yeet out of phase, or Wraith if you yeet out of phase and you miss, recover fast. So overall, I think it has more uses than people think, but obviously it's still not going to be anywhere near like B tier. Whispers. I think that Whispers is an incredibly strong tracking perk. I'm going to put it in S tier. It is very complicated to use. Now, if you're new to the game or you don't use Whispers enough, you might not understand how to use it, but it's pretty much like a radar, and you use the edge of the radar to track the survivor. So if you like go to the left and it activates, and then you back up and it deactivates, and then you go to the right and then you go forward a little bit, so northeast, and it doesn't activate, you know that the survivor is going to be in the left corner because you backed up, turned Whispers off, and went forward and to the right instead. So now you closed off all the other areas, and you know that that survivor has to be in that left area that you first triggered Whispers. It's hard to explain. There are guides on YouTube where you can watch how to use Whispers effectively, but once you learn how to use it, this perk can be fucking fantastic. Zanshin Tactics. You can see the aura of pallets, breakout walls, and vaults within 32 meters. Good for learning, but I mean, it's not as good as Windows. I'm going to say it's useless. I don't even think it's useful for like high skill plays. Like, you should be able to look at a structure and immediately know where the window's going to be, where the pallet's going to be. Like when I look at for example, a long wall jungle gym, I can see based on where the pallet is, if it's going to be a long wall. I can see based on where the window is, where the pallet's going to spawn. You know, those are things you should just automatically be able to deduce. So not a good perk. All right. Do we end it here? Let's go ahead and actually talk about Pinhead, the Cenobite, and his perks. Let's go find them, shall we? All right, let's go ahead and talk about the new perks. Don't worry, I didn't forget about these. Okay, so the Cenobite comes with the 3 teachable perks. Deadlock. You induce a mental suffering by crushing any hope of escape. After a generator is repaired, the entity blocks the generator with the most progress for 30 seconds. See its aura as white during this time. I'm going to put this as B tier. I think that it is very useful. It lets you know what generator is being worked on, aside from the one that just got popped, and it also blocks it for half of a minute. That's very useful. You know, that's enough time for you to get it down, hook that guy, and maybe bring a Pop Goes the Weasel over to it. Overall, I think Deadlock is a B tier perk. Very good. Hex Plaything. The first time you hook a survivor, they become cursed, and Hex Plaything activates on a dual totem. The cursed survivor suffers from the Oblivious status effect until Hex Plaything is cleansed. Hex Plaything's totem order is revealed to the cursed survivor when they are within 16 meters of it. For the first 90 seconds, only the cursed survivor can cleanse the totem. So the Oblivious status effect, again, very cool. I think that Hex Plaything is going to be C tier, though it can activate 4 times in a single trial, once for every unique survivor you hook, as long as there's dual totems available. Very cool concept, but I will have to see more before I raise it on the tier list. But for now, I'm going to say that it is, C tier. Scourge Hook, Gift of Pain. You are the bringer of sweet pain. At the start of the trial, up to 4 random hooks are changed into Scourge Hooks. You see their auras in white. When a survivor is unhooked from a Scourge Hook, they suffer from the Hemorrhage and Mangled status effect until they get fully healed. And when they become fully healed, they get a penalty to healing and repairing actions until they get injured again. Okay, this is, in my opinion, going to be an A tier perk. The reason is because when you hook them on this hook, not only when they get unhooked do they take longer to heal, slows down the heal, it takes longer for them to do gens. That's cracked, bro. I think it's going to be very strong, very cool perk. Now, obviously, my opinions can change as I get to actually use these perks in game because I haven't yet, but I'll leave it at that. And that concludes the killer tier list. Surprisingly, there are less perks, but I think that this video went on actually longer than the survivor tier list. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Obviously, these are my opinions. This isn't based on comp. You can have different, opinions. It's okay. You can have different categories on which you rate these perks. Like you can be rating them on which one's more fun, in which case you might put fucking Mindbreaker at S tier. Mindbreaker stands, don't worry, I see you, I know. But yeah, if you guys, have any perk that you love on killer and you think is not done justice in this tier list, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And for the most part, that's it. If you guys are new, you enjoyed this discussion video, and you would like to join us, join the Legion, feel free to, subscribe, like, comment, turn on notifications, whatever the fuck you want to do. And for everybody who is, watching in general, subscriber or not, hope you guys have a good rest of your day, night, evening, morning, whatever time it is, whenever you're watching this video, wherever you guys live. And I'll see you guys in the fog. Peace.